Today we're at the British School of Brussels in Tervuren, Belgium, to find out a little bit more about social media. We have come to this international school to talk to those who know social media better than anyone, teenagers. Will there be a difference between the views of the students seen in London last week and those in Tervuren? We want to have an insight into what these teenagers are using these platforms for and how. We also want to understand how they generally see social media.
I use Instagram to post my photos. I use Facebook to keep in contact with people. Pinterest to get ideas and stuff like that. And Snapchat. Does Snapchat count? I use Snapchat.
I do use social media. I use all of the platforms. I use them every day in the morning when I first wake up. It's the first thing I do. I'm on Facebook. I use it to socialise because all of my friends have these apps.
Because it integrates not only the socialise, but it's got the messaging.
Started because I moved from Northern Ireland and I wanted to keep in touch with my mates when I went to Jakarta.
I remember I wasn't allowed Facebook until I was of age to have Facebook, but I don't remember what that age is.
Now that we know that these teenagers know how to use these social media platforms and understand them, we can ask them what social media brings to them.
I guess social media gives me like a much wider outlook into what my friends are doing. I mean, I don't even have to talk to people to know what they're up to, which is, I guess, a good thing, but also a bad thing. I mean, there's absolutely no privacy and it kind of eliminates any reason to actually speak to someone in person. But it also gives really easy access to other people's opinions and other people's point of views.
Because obviously people can post whatever they want, and so people are exposed to so many different more identities.
I guess in a sense, it's easier for younger people to express themselves, voice their views, and maybe even to shape their views to an extent, because there's so many, like you can get into contact with so many different point of views rather than just having whatever your teachers or parents tell you.
What about 12 and 13-year-olds nowadays, compared to when these students were 12 or 13?
Well, I think the technology is much more readily available to 12 and 13-year-olds now. Whereas me, I got my first phone, which was a Nokia brick, when I was maybe 10. So I think the quicker that technology advances, it's obviously more available to them, whereas we grew up to adapt to it. It's just readily available for them, and it's already part of their life, so obviously they can use it more.
They use social media in a much more grown-up way than we used to. Because it's such a normal thing now, whereas when we were younger, it was like only older people had it.
And now I feel like 13-year-old people are quite open with everything. Maybe even like a tiny bit too open.
Some people blame social media for the rise in anorexia and depression amongst teenagers. What do you think?
It brings attention to the topics, but it's bad attention.
Our generation is more aware of the dangers in social media than the one to come.
Like for example Tumblr, where I would say a lot of negative behaviors might be advertised to quite an extent. And I guess the same came with Instagram as well, because there's a lot of pressure probably, especially for younger girls, to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to be a certain way in general. And it's probably not always healthy for them. So I think, yeah, the pressure probably is bad. Hard to understand, especially for like older generations as well. Like you wouldn't imagine that there's going to be a whole website that advertises and like supports you in your eating disorder. Like that's completely ridiculous. But there's going to be young people that discover that.
Interestingly enough, although these teenagers are very much aware of the dangers and negative aspects of social media, they're still constantly using it because it is so integrated into our society and culture and into their lifestyles, just like the students seen in London.